Annapolis, a city on the Severn, was established in 1649. It was ideal for easy access to the Chesapeake for shipping tobacco. Annapolis became the seat of power of Maryland. In 1695, the town began to grow. Soon wealthy planters, skilled artisans, merchants, trade persons are drawn to commerce and activity in the once sleepy town. Annapolis is called by some the Athens of America, a town of great culture, taverns, balls, music, horse races, and home of the finest food and delicacies of the Chesapeake. By the 1700s, ships crossed the Atlantic and brought luxury goods, rum, clothes to the shores of Annapolis. Marylanders began human trafficking to maintain their lavish lifestyles. Indentured servants and captured Africans were imported to the city of Annapolis to be bought and sold. The transatlantic slave trade was in full swing, and Annapolis was a location where visitors could be entertained, enjoy horse races, eat oysters and terrapin, and purchase a captured African to enslave, take home to the fields, and to work. The most famous captured African from Gambia was Kunta Kinte, portrayed in the miniseries Roots as written by his descendant, Alex Haley, who was a professor and author. Alex Haley pursued awareness of all descendants of Africans who survived the Middle Passage. Many captured Africans arrived and were sold in the city of Annapolis, and they were often sold to farmers who carried their chattel property to large plantations to work in fields, where they would learn English. After the Revolution, Annapolis is home of 4 Maryland signers of the Declaration of Independence, home of religious tolerance and race mixing. The manumissions, also known as Freedom Papers, began to rise up.
They call me Smith, known throughout the city of Annapolis as blacksmith and farmer. I was born in Port Tobacco, born into slavery to Daniel of St. Thomas Jennifer, nephew of Thomas Stone, and came to Annapolis when Jennifer became the first president of the Senate and Maryland General Assembly. It was in Annapolis that I met my wife, Ann Shorter, daughter of Peter Shorter in Yarmouth, Nova Scotia. Her family, like other Acadians, were seeking religion in Annapolis, where many of them found themselves in bondage to tavern keeper William Reynolds and Jennifer. After the death of Daniel, Jennifer's nephew freed me and my family from slavery, free to sign my own mark. On the same day that I received freedom, I leased land on Octon to begin a community where free blacks and enslaved people could live freely in their own homes. It was 1799. Myself and other free black men, my posse as I call them, built homes, laid out a cemetery, and a meeting house that became the first African Methodist Episcopal Church in the city of Annapolis, and laid out a future for my children and future Annapolitans. Rise up, Annapolis.
And rise up they did. Enslaved and free blacks used every opportunity to seek freedom for all kin from slavery, and they did just that. The great grandson of Smith Price left Annapolis and became a heart surgeon, performing the first open heart at Providence Hospital in Chicago, an institution that he founded. Daniel Hare Williams became lovingly known as Dr. Dan, was the first black president of Howard University Medical School. Rise up!
Rise up, they did. The 1800s records the steady increase of the Annapolis free black population, and manumissions are increasing too. Many because of last will and testaments, and others direct purchases by family members. The free black is rising. Many clever and resourceful women make good use of their freedom by ensuring the freedom of their children. Yes, they did. Take, for example, Charity Folks, who received her freedom through the last will and testament of John Rideout, merchant and former Secretary of State. In his will, he favored his most cherished slave by leaving Charity a stipend, or pension, if you will, for the rest of her life. Charity became the wealthiest woman of color in all of Annapolis, owning numerous properties. Rise up! Then there was Jane Minsky Ennis Bishop, who also had the opportunity to rise up. Jane Minsky Ennis worked in a store on Church Street, known today as Main Street, where she met William Bishop of Cork County, Ireland. Interrupting William's planned adventure with his brother in the New World, he and Jane fell in love and were married. Jane and William, an interracial pairing, were not readily accepted in Annapolis. William, a learned teacher and barber, was ostracized by the white community, so he cleaned chimneys and carted coal. He also had a livery. The bishops attended St. Anne's Church across the street from the home on Church Circle. The bishops became another of Annapolis's wealthiest families. William and Jane had many children and grandchildren who, because of William, were well-schooled, and they too earned great wealth. While Jane was never freed, William and Jane received manumissions for all of their children when they aged out. In Maryland, the child's status, free or enslaved, is completely dependent on the mother's status. William and Jane's great-grandson, William Bishop, became the first doctor of color at the emergency hospital, the foundation of what we now know as Anne Arundel Medical Center. Annapolis is a bustling city, a multicultural melting pot. Black Annapolis continues to rise up.
The Civil War comes to Annapolis in 1864, and nearly half of the black population are free, and the enslaved population is ready to fight to end slavery. Answering Frederick Douglass's call to men of color to arms, 120 enslaved men from Annapolis and the South County enlisted and served in the U.S. Army until the rebellion was put down. Maryland, on November 1st, 1864, became the very first state to voluntarily abolish slavery when the Third Constitution of Maryland was ratified in the old House of Delegate Chambers in the Maryland State House. Rise up, Maryland!
After the war, slavery is over. The 13th Amendment brings with it penal codes, another name for slavery, along with Jim Crow laws that made for a different life for blacks in Annapolis. The first black school, founded by local clergy and businessmen, was opened in 1865 and named the Stanton Colored School, and a larger black community built up around the school. Numerous black businesses were opened, black churches were established, fraternal organizations, Masons, the Grand Army of the Republic, Old Fellows, the Order of Isaac and Rebecca. A separate world was founded, and Black Annapolis wanted a seat at the table. Local blacks ran for political office, and Annapolis elected the first black official in the state of Maryland. William Henry Butler was elected to the Annapolis City Council in 1873. The former slave and master carpenter was living next door to the Annapolis City Hall at Duke of Gloucester Street. Along with the growth and development were dark days in the lives of Black Annapolis, when lynchings began in the black community in the city of Annapolis. The last hanging took place in the city jail at Calvert Street in 1928. While days are dark, you must rise up, Annapolis.
For blacks in Annapolis, equal justice under law was difficult to achieve on and off in the entire history of Annapolis. City officials attempted to suppress the vote of black men in 1915 through legislation, and they were met with great resistance. Leading the way to secure legal counsel, the Honorable Wally H. Bates and Washingtonian Jerome Bonaparte created a dream team that fought voter suppression, and they won at the Supreme Court. The Grandfather Clause was struck down in Annapolis and Crisfield, Maryland. Blacks in Annapolis have held office in local government uninterrupted to this very day. In an attempt to receive equal pay, teachers in the city of Annapolis, employed by the County Board of Education, sued the superintendent and hired a very young Thurgood Marshall to argue their case. He won in the Court of Appeals, formerly located behind his statue right here. Not long after that, Marshall won the landmark court case desegregating schools in the nation. The desegregation continued into secondary education of state-run colleges and universities, and Thurgood Marshall remained on the case, integrating the University of Maryland, one department at a time. Donald Murray was the very first black student to attend the University of Maryland. The fight for equal justice under law continued throughout the 20th century, and the fight for inclusion continues today. Black Annapolis has participated in every American theater and continues to rise up. There is so much more. Join us for a walk through Annapolis through the eyes of Black Annapolis. Visit Annapolis with our legacy tours.